On August 20th, 1966, an 18-year-old boy was flying a kite near Vintém Hill in Niterói, Brazil. When he ventured into the dense brush near the summit to retrieve it, he found the bodies of two men, Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, lying side by side. The two were local electronic technicians from a neighboring town, men who spent their days building and repairing circuitry. Their appearance seemed out of place for a muddy hilltop. Despite the terrain, both men wore formal business suits and heavy waterproof raincoats. Resting directly over both men's eyes were custom-cut masks fashioned entirely from sheets of solid lead. The surrounding area offered no explanation for their presence. There was no blood on the soil, no physical trauma to their bodies, and no signs of a struggle. The grass beneath them remained barely disturbed. These details suggested a scene of strange composure. It appeared Manuel and Miguel had walked up the hill and willingly laid down to wait. Getting answers required swift medical analysis, but rough weather and steep terrain delayed the recovery. The bodies remained exposed to the humid elements for several days before they were finally brought down for examination. At the morgue, the investigation stalled. The local coroner's office conducted a flawed autopsy and bypassed the standard toxicology screen, missing the only opportunity to check for chemical substances. By the time a second analysis was ordered, advanced decomposition had set in. The internal organs were too degraded to yield evidence of poison or radiation exposure. With the biological evidence gone, the medical cause of death became a permanent mystery. Investigators were forced to build their understanding of the case entirely from the objects found at the scene. Next to Miguel's body, police found a small notebook. Its pages were filled of the technical language of their trade, complex electronic formulas and mathematical calculations. Tucked among those equations was a set of instructions written in Portuguese. It provided a strict minute-by-minute timeline for what would be their final hours. The entry ordered them to arrive at the determined location at 4:30 p.m. Then, at 6:30 p.m., they were instructed to swallow the capsule. The final command read, "After the effect, protect metals, wait for the signal, mask." This sequence of events aligns with the practices of certain underground spiritualist groups of the era. These groups believed that a combination of electronics and psychedelic drugs could facilitate contact with extraterrestrial life. The notebook suggests Manuel and Miguel were not passive victims. They were deliberate participants, treating their own bodies as tools in a highly structured ritual. This technical approach explains the presence of the lead masks. If the men were attempting contact, the masks likely served a functional purpose related to the instruction to protect metals. As technicians, Manuel and Miguel knew that solid lead is an effective shield against intense radiation and magnetic fields. Their preparations match a report from a local woman living near the hill. She claimed to see a glowing orange saucer-shaped object hovering over the summit exactly when the men ingested the capsules. If a craft was expected, the men may have believed its arrival would emit blinding light or lethal cosmic radiation. The masks were literal protective gear built to safeguard their sight during the encounter. The eyewitness account, the timeline, and the masks suggest the men were bracing for a physical event, a paranormal contact that may have had a tragically high physical cost. There was also the matter of the money. Before leaving for Niterói, the men withdrew a large sum of cash to buy materials for work. When their bodies were found, the money was gone. This missing cash suggests a different scenario, a premeditated robbery disguised as a spiritual experience. From this perspective, the communication capsule was a lethal dose of poison, provided by an accomplice or a fraudulent guide who knew about the cash they were carrying. Even the masks take on a darker utility. By convincing the men that the masks were necessary to shield them from divine light, the killer ensured they would voluntarily blindfold themselves, rendering them defenseless as the poison took effect. The same objects that point toward an occult ritual also serve as the tools for a carefully staged crime. Looking back at Vintém Hill, the evidence remains split between two possible realities. We are left to choose between a fatal spiritual miscalculation and a robbery so effectively disguised that it left no trace of the killer. Regardless of the theory, the masks are the defining image of the case.
They represent the moment Manuel and Miguel surrendered their primary sense to their expectations. leaving them vulnerable to whatever actually met them on that hilltop. With the forensic evidence long gone, the truth of their final moments remains hidden behind two crude sheets of lead.